Last night, well, not too late, more like early evening, Weinbach dropped some fresh news that stirred things up. He pointed out that the Bulls could be a team interested in Domantas Sabonis. The way you said it, man, it almost sounded like you weren't feeling it. Like, oh, we got Weinbach out here again, spreading something new. But to be fair, he's just doing his job, reporting what he's heard. No shade to him at all. Still, I totally get why your tone had that edge. It's not about him, it's about these endless rumors. Every time you turn around, there's another one floating around Chicago, and it's starting to feel exhausting. But since Sabonis' name is in the mix, let's actually talk about it. Because, honestly, we're probably thinking the same thing here. There are both positives and negatives worth breaking down. One big positive, Sabonis is an absolute monster on the glass. He's one of the best defensive rebounders in the entire league, no question. And considering how many second-chance points the Bulls have been giving up lately, having a guy like him locking down the boards could change the whole defensive vibe. He brings that physical presence inside that Chicago's been missing for way too long. And even though his assist numbers are down this season, let's be real, it's not because he forgot how to pass. Playing next to DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine limits his touches, but the man has averaged 8 to 9 assists a game over the last few years. That's elite-level playmaking for a big. If the Bulls somehow brought him in and figured out how to make the fit work, Sabonis could seriously open up a whole new flow for this offense. And on top of that, Sabonis is a legit triple-double threat every single night. Having two players like him and Vooch sharing the floor could completely open up the Bulls' offense in ways we haven't seen before. The ball movement, the spacing, the inside-out play, it could get dangerous quick. Let's stick to the positives for now, Pat, even though I know we both have some negatives waiting to come out later. So what are some of the biggest upsides to possibly trading for Sabonis? Well, here's the thing. Sabonis feels like a younger, sharper version of Nikola Vucevic. He brings a lot of the same skills, but with a bit more juice and defensive effort. And yeah, I'll say it, he's definitely the better defender between the two. He's quietly brought back some of that defensive energy we saw from him during his Indiana days. He wasn't locking people up back then, but you could tell he had that awareness, that hustle. It's clear the Kings have built a system focused more on running and gunning, which doesn't always highlight his defensive side. But if you were in a slower-paced, more structured system, like what Billy Donovan runs in Chicago, Sabonis could really lock in and show more of that two-way potential. But what really makes him stand out is his consistency. You can count on him for a double-double almost every night, and his playmaking is elite. He's been one of the best passing big men in the entire NBA for years now. You can even run your whole offense through him when a guard like Josh Giddey, or in the Bulls' case, Kobe White or Lonzo, if healthy, isn't on the floor. He's the kind of player who can keep things flowing without your team missing a beat. Now, let's be real though. The likely scenario here is that you're getting a player who, even at his peak, is pretty similar to what you already have in Vucevic. The difference is mainly age. Sabonis is about 6 years younger, which isn't nothing. Getting younger is always good for the long-term picture. But honestly, this whole situation feels a lot like when the Bulls first traded for Vooch. He was 29 then, and this move would almost be history repeating itself, just with a slightly fresher face. Yeah, this whole thing honestly feels way too familiar, almost like deja vu from when the Bulls traded for Vooch. The moves line up in a lot of ways. Now, don't get me wrong, Sabonis is the better player between the two. He's younger, more efficient, and his offensive versatility gives him an edge, but the situation still feels eerily similar. The one big difference this time around, though, is that the Bulls actually have a point guard, or even two. That alone could make things look a little better than the Vooch era. But here's where we hit the negatives, Pat, and there are some big ones we can't ignore. First off, Sabonis' contract is massive. The man is making around $40 million a year. That's literally double what Vooch is getting paid. Now, if you're sending out some expiring contracts, say a package like Zach Collins and Kevin Huerter, it could technically work, and honestly, I wouldn't hate that move on paper. But let's keep it real. It's definitely going to cost more than just that. You'd have to throw in some draft picks to make it happen, and that's when things start to getting tricky. Taking on $40 million also means your cap flexibility for next season takes a huge hit. That kind of move instantly tightens your budget and makes it harder to keep key players like Ayo Dosunmu or Kobe White long-term. And Bulls fans are already nervous about whether the front office is ready to pay both. And then there's the defensive side of things, which honestly doesn't get much better with Sabonis. Sure, he's a little better than Vooch defensively, but not by much. He still doesn't give you any rim protection. Vooch averages about a block per game for his career, and Sabonis sits around half that. So while you're getting more passing and rebounding, you're not fixing one of the Bulls' biggest problems, stopping opponents at the rim. So yeah, Sabonis might be a flashier version of Vooch, but when you look deeper, you realize it's just a shinier version of the same puzzle, and the defensive holes are right there. Yeah, bringing in Sabonis would basically be like taking what the Bulls already have and just upgrading it to a more polished, cleaner version. You'd get smoother playmaking, better rebounding, and maybe a little more consistency, but the core problems, they'd still be right there. It wouldn't solve Chicago's biggest weakness, defense. Right now, the Bulls have slipped all the way down to being the second worst defensive team in the entire league. That's not just bad. That's embarrassing for a team that's supposed to have veterans and supposed defensive anchors. So for me, that's the biggest concern with this kind of trade. Sabonis might bring flash and skill, but he's not changing that defensive story. Yeah, man, I've looked at it too. His defensive rating right now sits around 117, which definitely isn't great, but last year he was at about 112, which isn't terrible either. It shows that he can defend when he's locked in and surrounded by the right kind of team effort. It's not elite, but it's respectable. Still, the problem is, Sabonis doesn't fix that lack of rim protection the Bulls desperately need. That's just not part of his game. You can't expect him to suddenly turn into a shot blocker or a paint enforcer. He's never been that guy. And honestly, it feels like defense across the roster has just been falling off a cliff lately. It's not even just about Sabonis, it's about effort. Guys just don't seem to care the way they used to. They're not rotating, not contesting, not fighting for boards. When players stop giving that energy on defense, even the best system falls apart fast. And that's exactly where the Bulls are at right now. Sabonis might polish things up a bit, but he's not fixing the heart of this team's defensive problem. Now, to be fair, Billy Donovan has a real talent for squeezing the best defensive effort out of his players. His system pushes accountability and teamwork, and he's known for getting guys to buy in on that end of the floor. So, yeah, I could totally see Domantas Sabonis coming to Chicago and becoming at least a slightly better defender than what we've seen from him so far in his career. Back when he was in Indiana, Sabonis actually showed more defensive effort. He wasn't locking people up, but he played his role. Of course, that was mostly because he had Miles Turner beside him. Turner handled all the rim protection, blocking shots left and right, while Sabonis did the dirty work, using his body, boxing out, setting position before Turner came flying in. It worked because Sabonis didn't have to be the rim protector. He just had to be solid. But let's be real, the Bulls don't have a Miles Turner waiting in the paint. And without that kind of partner, Sabonis' defensive weaknesses would be exposed quick. So here's where I stand. The bottom line for me is this. I don't think Sabonis changes the team enough to justify giving up real draft capital. That's where the deal starts to lose me. It's not that he's not talented, it's just that he doesn't elevate the Bulls enough to make it worth sacrificing their future assets. And that's a fair point because any real trade for him is definitely going to cost something. You'd have to include at least some draft compensation, unless, of course, we're talking about one of those wild trades we've seen recently, like when teams toss around 11 second-round picks just to make the numbers work. That kind of deal might fly under the radar, but anything more than that, yeah, I'd think twice before pulling that trigger. So let's talk about what could actually change this whole situation. What if the deal included that Portland pick, the one that finally looks like it's going to convey either this season or next, along with a few expiring contracts? Would that make a Sabonis trade more appealing? Honestly, I'd lean toward yes. I'm a bird in hand type of thinker. I'd rather take something guaranteed now than gamble on what might come later. If the Portland pick is confirmed to convey soon, that's a real asset to work with. Sure, it's likely to land outside the lottery, maybe somewhere between 19 and 32, but you can still find solid players in that range. Maybe not a star big like Sabonis, but definitely someone with potential. So if the trade package was just expiring deals and that Portland pick, I wouldn't be mad at that at all. That's a clean move, especially if the Bulls manage to keep their own first-rounder. It gives you the talent boost without completely wiping out your flexibility or your draft future. Now, here's something that makes it even more interesting. If Sabonis did land in Chicago, he'd be teaming up with another Lithuanian, Buzelis. That connection alone will be huge. Imagine the chemistry and pride that could come from having two Lithuanian ballers representing in the same lineup. The energy from that pairing would be electric, especially for international fans who'd go crazy seeing those two share the floor. Plus, having Buzelis, a young, versatile forward still finding his rhythm, learning alongside a veteran like Sabonis could be special. Sabonis' playmaking, toughness, and experience could help shape Modis into a more complete player. That Lithuanian duo could bring something new and exciting to the Bulls' identity. And honestly, that's a story worth watching. If the Bulls actually pulled this off and brought in Sabonis, pairing him with Buzelis, that could be the start of something special in Chicago. Two Lithuanians holding it down together in the Windy City, that's not just good basketball, that's a story that sells itself. Add in the right supporting cast, maybe a sharpshooter like Trey Murphy, and suddenly this team looks young, skilled, and exciting again. But let's keep it real. It all depends on whether the front office is finally ready to make a real move. The Bulls have been sitting on assets for too long, watching other teams reshape their futures while we stay stuck in the middle. If there was ever a time to go bold, this is it. Chicago's got the pieces, the picks, and now, maybe, the motivation to finally turn the page. And who knows, if Sabonis and Buzelis click the way we think they can, this city could be buzzing again. The United Center might just start feeling like the place to be once more. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. What do you think, Bulls fans? Should the team go all in for Sabonis and build around him and Domantas Buzelis? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to share this with every Bulls fan you know. Let's get this conversation going.